When my mom texted, "This year, just your brother's family," I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back 2 words: enjoy it. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I owned a $5 million mountain ranch tucked deep in Aspen's snow-covered pines. That Thanksgiving, I invited everyone except them. And when they saw the photos of our celebration without them, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The story's just beginning. My name's Lucas Bennett, and if you'd asked anyone in my family who'd make it in life, I can promise you, my name never came up. Growing up in Fort Collins, Colorado, our house was small but full of noise. My mom, Margaret, my dad, Tom, my older brother, Ethan, and me, the quiet one who never seemed to fit in. From the outside, we looked like your classic American family: 2 sons, a golden retriever, and Sunday dinners. But inside, everything revolved around one person: Ethan. He was the star quarterback, the straight-A student, the son who made my parents glow with pride. And me? I was Ethan's little brother. Even when I did something right, it somehow circled back to him. If I brought home an art project, Mom would say, "That's nice, honey. Ethan made something similar when he was your age." If I got a B+ on a test, Dad would say, "Ethan got an A. Maybe he can help you study." I learned early that I could either compete or disappear. I chose to disappear. I still remember my 10th birthday. Mom had promised me a party, a few friends, cake, and maybe even that remote control car I'd been begging for. But the morning of my birthday, Ethan's soccer coach called. The team had made it to the regional finals. Within an hour, the decorations came down, the cake was pushed aside, and we all piled into the car to watch Ethan play. That day, I sat in the bleachers while my parents screamed his name. The car stayed in its box at the store. I told myself I didn't mind, but that's the thing about being ignored: it doesn't hurt all at once. It's like a slow leak in your chest that never stops. As we got older, the gap between us widened. Ethan got a shiny new car at 16. I got Dad's old pickup with the broken AC. Ethan's college tuition was paid in full. I was told to learn responsibility by finding scholarships and working part-time. I can still hear Dad's voice. "You're smart, Lucas. You'll figure it out." Your brother's focusing on his future. My future apparently didn't need support, just resilience. Holidays were the worst. Every Christmas, Ethan and his fiancée, Melissa, would walk in like royalty, arms full of gifts, and Mom would fuss over them as if the rest of us didn't exist. One year, I gave my parents a framed painting I'd made of our old family cabin. My mom smiled politely and set it aside. 10 minutes later, she was crying over the designer watch Ethan had given her. I wasn't jealous of the watch. I was jealous of the way she looked at him when she opened it, like he was her miracle. By my early 20s, I'd mastered invisibility. I went to college hours away, rarely called home, and when I did, the conversation was always the same. "How's work? Ethan just got promoted. Are you dating anyone?" Ethan and Melissa are planning their second baby. It wasn't cruelty. It was just that I didn't exist in their emotional orbit. Looking back, I think my parents genuinely believed they were fair. They'd say things like, "We love you both equally, Lucas." But love isn't about what you say. It's about who you show up for. The last Christmas I spent with them before everything changed, I arrived to find a family photo already framed on the mantle, without me in it. They'd taken it at Ethan's house the month before. When I pointed it out, Mom said, "Oh, it was just a quick picture, honey. Don't make it a big deal." That was the night I realized I could either keep trying to be seen or start building a life where I didn't need their validation. As everyone laughed around the table, I remember staring out the window, snow falling softly outside, and whispering to myself, "One day, they'll see what they threw away." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise to myself, to rise quietly, without their approval, without their applause. When you spend your whole life being overlooked, you learn to find light in the cracks. That light, for me, was ambition. It didn't burn out of rage. It burned out of hunger, the hunger to matter, to prove that I could build something from nothing. I just didn't know that someday, that hunger would lead to everything they never thought I could have. And that one Thanksgiving would change everything. Leaving home wasn't hard. What was hard was realizing that no one really noticed I was gone. When I packed my old pickup and drove off to college in Boulder, my mom hugged me quickly, my dad shook my hand, and Ethan wasn't even there. He'd just landed his first real job and texted me a quick, "Good luck, bro." That was it. It felt like walking off the edge of a map, heading into a world that didn't expect me to return. College was messy, exhausting, and lonely, but it was mine. I worked nights as a janitor, mornings as a barista, and crammed coding tutorials between classes. I couldn't afford new textbooks, so I'd sit in the library for hours copying the chapters by hand into a notebook. Meanwhile, my parents sent Ethan care packages, snacks, gas cards, handwritten letters. I got emails reminding me to stay out of trouble. Still, I was determined. Every hour of hard work felt like a quiet rebellion against everything they believed about me. And for the first time, I felt free. Every couple of months, I'd call home. The conversations were short and predictable. "Hey mom, how's everyone doing?" "Oh, Ethan just bought a new house. You should see it, Lucas. It's beautiful." "How's school?" Or, "Dad, I got an internship." "That's great, son. Ethan just got promoted to regional manager." It wasn't even malicious. It was habitual, like breathing. Everything was filtered through Ethan's life. After a while, I stopped calling so often. They never really asked why. When I did go home for holidays, Ethan was always center stage. He'd hold court at the table, telling stories about business trips, his perfect kids, and his wife, Melissa, who never missed an opportunity to mention how successful her husband was. My parents hung on every word. And me? I sat there, smiling politely, sipping my drink, waiting for someone to remember I existed. One Thanksgiving, I mentioned a project I was developing for a startup. Mom smiled and said, "That's nice, honey. But Ethan's company just signed a huge deal." Dad added, "You should learn from your brother, son. He knows how to seize opportunities." I laughed, but inside, I felt the air leaving my lungs. It was like talking into a vacuum where sound and self-worth just disappeared. After college, I moved to Denver, renting a tiny apartment with a broken heater and a view of an alleyway. I started working freelance in web design, taking every small gig I could find. Most clients didn't pay much, but I learned fast. When one of my clients, a logistics firm, asked if I could automate some of their data processing, I built a tool that cut their manual labor in half. They were stunned. That little project turned into something bigger. Soon, other companies started calling. I built a small team, and within 3 years, I had my own startup. My parents didn't really ask what I did for a living. They just assumed I was still figuring things out. Ethan, meanwhile, had a big house, a country club membership, and kids enrolled in private school. Mom would brag about him to everyone, cashiers, neighbors, church friends. When I visited, I'd hear her say, "Ethan's such a good father. Lucas is still doing that computer thing." The computer thing. It used to sting. But after a while, I let it roll off me. I started realizing that the best revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was living well enough that I didn't care. By the time I hit 30, we were practically strangers. Ethan's life looked like a commercial for suburban success. Barbecues, golf weekends, family portraits. Mine was quiet, built on long hours and code, late nights, and risk. I sent Christmas cards. They sometimes forgot to reply. When Dad got sick one winter, I drove 4 hours to visit him. Ethan showed up in his Tesla, late, carrying gifts for Mom. When I tried to talk to Dad about my business, he nodded absently, then turned to Ethan. "Your brother's doing great things, you know. He could give you some tips." I wanted to laugh, tips from him, but I just smiled. That was the moment I stopped expecting anything from them. People talk about letting go like it's peaceful. It isn't. It's slow and painful, like untying a knot that's been there your whole life. I stopped visiting so often. I built a circle of friends who saw me, who believed in me. And with every new project, every client, every success, I started to believe in myself too. By the time I hit my early 30s, my company had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Investors called. A Fortune 500 company offered to buy us out. I sold the business. Overnight, I became a millionaire. But I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not Ethan. Especially not them. Because some secrets are sweeter when they're earned in silence. Success didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly, like snow falling on pine trees in the dark, silent and soft until one morning, you look around and realize everything's changed. When I sold my company, it wasn't for some insane Silicon Valley fortune, but it was more money than I'd ever imagined having. More than enough to buy comfort, peace, and something I'd always craved: freedom. No board meetings. No people to impress. No parents to validate me. For once, my life belonged entirely to me. I'd always loved the mountains. As a kid, whenever things got too loud at home, Ethan's games, my parents' constant comparisons, I'd grab my sketchbook and wander off to the hills behind our house. The silence felt like safety. So when it came time to choose where to start over, I didn't want a mansion in the city. I wanted peace. I wanted trees. After months of searching, I found it, a 150-acre ranch tucked into the folds of Aspen's high country, bordered by fir trees and a view that looked like a painting. There was a main cabin, 3 guest lodges, a stable, and a winding creek that froze into silver ribbons in the winter. The price? Just over $5 million. I signed the papers without hesitation. That night, standing on the porch, I watched the first snowfall of the season drift through the air, each flake glittering under the porch light. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. I spent the next few years living differently. No more racing deadlines, no more city noise. My mornings started with coffee on the deck, watching elk move through the fog. My evenings ended with a book, the fire crackling beside me. I built trails around the property, learned to ride horses, and even hosted small gatherings for friends and neighbors. But when my family asked where I lived now, I told them simply, "Oh, somewhere near the mountains." They didn't ask which mountains, and I didn't offer. Keeping it secret. It wasn't out of spite, at least not entirely. It was self-preservation. I knew exactly how my family would react if they found out. Mom would downplay it. Dad would credit good luck. Ethan would turn it into competition. I didn't want their approval anymore, and I didn't want to see the jealousy in their eyes either. Some things are better when they're just yours. So while they imagined me struggling in some small apartment, I was hiking through snow-covered trails with my dog, Scout, breathing mountain air so clean it felt like starting over every morning. The funny part? My parents were still obsessed with Ethan's success. Whenever we talked, which was rare, it always circled back to him. Ethan just bought a boat. Ethan's family is going to Europe this summer. I'd smile, looking out at the mountain peaks beyond my window, thinking, you couldn't pay me to trade places. I didn't need yachts or Europe. I had something far rarer: peace of mind. Every now and then, Mom would call out of the blue, "Lucas, we haven't seen you in ages. You should come by for Thanksgiving or Christmas." I always said I'd think about it. But when I did visit, it felt like stepping into an old movie I didn't belong in anymore. Ethan's kids ran around calling me Uncle Luke, while my parents hovered over them like they were made of gold. At one point, Mom said, "You know, your brother's house is getting too small. Maybe you could help him find something bigger, since you're so good with that internet stuff." I nearly laughed out loud. Here I was, a multimillionaire, and she still thought I was a tech guy who could maybe help Ethan Google houses. I said, "Sure, Mom," and changed the subject. I learned something important living out there alone. Success feels empty if you don't have peace. I'd spent my 20s chasing money, but in those quiet mountain mornings, I realized what I'd really been chasing was self-worth. Every sunrise that spilled over the snow told me the same thing. I didn't need them to see me anymore. And yet, even when you let go of your family, they still have a way of finding you again. I just didn't know that the message that would bring them back into my life would be so simple, so casual, and so cruel. It arrived one crisp November morning, 1 week before Thanksgiving. A single text that would spark everything that came next. "This year, just your brother's family." Those 7 words changed everything. It was early November. The air in Aspen had that quiet stillness that only comes before a storm. Crisp, cold, and almost too still. I was on the porch, sipping coffee while Scout dozed at my feet, when my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Mom. I remember glancing down, half expecting a casual, "How are you?" or maybe one of those forwarded prayer chain messages she loved sending. But instead, I saw it. "This year, just your brother's family for Thanksgiving. We're keeping it small." That was it. No greeting. No explanation. Just that. I read it 3 times before it sank in. For a second, I thought maybe she sent it by mistake. Maybe she meant to send it only to Ethan. But no. My name was right there in the thread, sandwiched between Ethan's and Melissa's. I could almost hear her voice in that message, soft, polite, wrapped in fake warmth. We're keeping it small. Like it was nothing. And maybe, for her, it was nothing. But for me, it was years of déjà vu. The same pattern replaying itself, me being the one left out, the one quietly erased. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have asked, why not me? I could have joked, guess I didn't make the guest list. But instead, I typed 2 words. Enjoy it. And hit send. I set the phone down and just sat there. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the faint echo of coyotes. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt empty. That quiet kind of ache you get when you realize someone doesn't see your absence as a loss. After a while, I got up and walked to the fence line, where the land dropped off into the valley. The mountains stood tall against the morning light, their peaks dusted with new snow. That view had always healed me, but that morning, it hit differently. I thought about every time I'd been excluded, every canceled birthday, every forgotten invitation, every family photo I wasn't in. And suddenly, something inside me shifted. It wasn't about Thanksgiving. It wasn't about turkey or family dinners. It was about a lifetime of being the afterthought. I realized something important that morning. You can forgive people for not understanding you, but you don't have to keep showing up to be ignored. So instead of feeling hurt, I felt free. Free from the need to be seen by them. Free from pretending that being part of the family still meant something. But even freedom has an edge of sadness. Because deep down, there's always that kid inside you who still wants his parents to say, "We're proud of you." That night, I sat by the fireplace, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Family pictures, Ethan holding trophies, Mom smiling, Dad beaming beside him. In almost every one, I was somewhere in the corner, blurred or cropped halfway out. I don't know what made me do it, but I started thinking, what if this year I did Thanksgiving my way? Not out of spite, not out of revenge, just as a quiet statement. A reminder that family isn't about who excludes you. It's about who shows up. I had the space. I had the means. And, for once, I had the will to make it count. So I opened my contact list and scrolled down to names I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Marie, Uncle Ray, my cousins Noah, Sophie, and Claire. People who'd been on the sidelines, just like me. People who, in their own way, had been left out too. One by one, I started calling. When Aunt Marie picked up, I said, "Hey, Auntie, what are you doing for Thanksgiving this year?" She sighed. "Same as always. Honey, probably nothing special." I smiled. "Not this year. Pack your bags. You're coming to Aspen." Her laughter filled the line. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't planning a revenge dinner. I was building something I'd never really had before. A real family Thanksgiving. That text from my mom, it didn't break me. It built me. Because sometimes, when the door closes on you long enough, you learn how to build your own house. And this time, mine came with mountain views. At first, I told myself it wasn't revenge. It was just a gathering. A Thanksgiving dinner with the people who'd been pushed aside, like me. But the truth? Some small part of me, deep down, wanted them to see it. To feel, for once, what it was like to be left out. Still, it wasn't anger that drove me. It was something quieter, sadder, like finally realizing you don't owe anyone your silence anymore. That night, after calling Aunt Marie, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and started sketching out a plan. I wanted the kind of Thanksgiving that felt like the ones I'd always imagined as a kid. Long tables under warm lights, laughter echoing through the cold air, kids running in the snow. Not the forced politeness of our family dinners back home. Not the whispered tension that came with every compliment aimed at Ethan. This would be real. I picked up the phone again. "Uncle Ray, it's Lucas. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" He chuckled. "Probably watching football alone, kid." "What?" "Not this year," I said. "You're coming to Aspen." He paused. "Aspen? Since when do you live there?" I smiled. "You'll see." By the next evening, I'd called nearly everyone who'd ever been quietly excluded from my parents' table. Cousins who never got invited because they weren't successful enough. Relatives Mom didn't like because they were too loud or too different. Every single one of them said yes. No hesitation. No excuses. It felt like I was putting something broken back together, piece by piece. But even as excitement built, that small flicker of bitterness stayed lit inside me. Not because I hated my family, but because I wanted to prove, without saying a word, that I was never the problem. A few days later, I sat by the fire with Scout at my feet, watching the flames twist and rise. I imagined Mom setting the table back home, Ethan's kids running around, the whole picture-perfect scene they loved to post online. They'd have no idea what was happening hundreds of miles away, how the son they'd overlooked was about to host the most beautiful Thanksgiving of his life. And I decided something right then. I wouldn't hide it. I wouldn't brag, either. I'd let the pictures speak for themselves. Not to hurt them, just to remind them that being left out doesn't mean being left behind. The plan was simple. I'd invite everyone else. We'd celebrate. We'd take photos, not posed, not forced, just moments of joy. And when the time was right, I'd share them. Not with a caption, not with anger, just with truth. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is the loudest way to say, I'm doing just fine without you. The week before Thanksgiving felt like magic waking up after a long sleep. Aspen was turning white by the hour, soft flakes drifting from the sky like powdered sugar over pine trees. The ranch, my ranch, sat proudly against the mountains, its timber walls glowing honey gold in the sunset. For the first time since buying it, I wasn't just admiring it. I was using it, filling it with life. Guests began arriving 3 days before Thanksgiving. The first car that rolled up the driveway belonged to Uncle Ray. He stepped out, eyes wide as he looked around. "Lucas," he said, whistling low. "You weren't kidding. You own this." "Yeah," I grinned. "Welcome home." He hugged me, tight, like he was proud of me in a way no one else had ever been. Soon after came Aunt Marie and her husband, then my cousin Jenna, her twin boys, and a slow but steady stream of relatives and old friends who'd all been quietly forgotten by the main branch of our family tree. By the time the first evening fire was lit, 22 people filled the ranch. The air buzzed with laughter and the rich smell of stew and cinnamon. The next morning, we got to work. I hung strings of amber lights across the porch beams while the kids built snowmen in the yard. Aunt Marie commandeered the kitchen like a general at war. She had flour on her face, 2 pies in the oven, and a third halfway made before breakfast was even over. Everywhere I turned, someone was doing something to make the place feel alive. Uncle Ray chopped wood with the twins. Jenna brought out her guitar and started teaching the kids Jingle Bells, even though it was still November. And me? I stood back sometimes and just watched. For so long, I'd associated Thanksgiving with quiet tension, me trying to blend into a family that never saw me. Now, for the first time, I felt seen. On the third day, my college buddy Marcus showed up with his wife and little daughter. He was grinning from ear to ear. "Dude, when you texted about Thanksgiving, I thought you were joking," he said. When I saw the location pin, I had to Google it twice. "Yeah," I laughed. "Guess I've been keeping secrets." That night, we sat outside by the fire pit, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars burn bright above the Rockies. The laughter carried far across the snow. Someone started telling stories, childhood pranks, bad dates, family drama, and for once, it wasn't about bitterness or pain. It was about connection, about choosing your people, not just being stuck with them. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a sky the color of silver. The smell of turkey filled every room. We had more food than I thought possible: pies, casseroles, roasted vegetables, and at least 3 dishes that involved way too much butter. The table stretched almost the entire length of the great room. We covered it with a handmade linen runner, pine branches from the forest, and small candles flickering in mason jars. As everyone gathered, the chatter died down. I raised my glass. "I don't have much of a speech," I began. I'm grateful you're all here. Some of us haven't been invited to the same table in a while. But tonight, we are." Silence hung for a beat. Then applause, laughter, clinking glasses. Aunt Marie sniffled and said, "You made this, Lucas. You made this happen." And for the first time in years, I believed her. After dinner, we stepped outside for photos. The snow was falling softly, the porch lights glowing like golden halos. Someone took a group picture, everyone bundled up, arms around each other, faces lit with joy. Then we took more. Candid shots. Laughter. Kids holding mugs of cocoa. Later, when I looked at those pictures, I didn't see revenge. I saw peace. I saw a family. Maybe not the one I was born into, but the one I'd built. Still, I knew what would happen when I posted them. Mom scrolled through Facebook every morning with her coffee. Ethan's wife posted every life update online. They'd see. They'd know. And for once, I wouldn't explain myself. When I finally uploaded the photos that night, I added no caption. Just one simple post. A ranch glowing with light. Laughter frozen mid-smile. The kind of warmth that money can't buy, but that freedom can. Then I put my phone face down on the nightstand and went to bed with a clear heart. The morning after Thanksgiving, sunlight poured through the cabin windows like melted gold. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet laughter downstairs. For a moment, everything felt suspended, peaceful, untouched. Then I picked up my phone. 37 missed calls, 14 voicemails, dozens of unread texts. My heart gave a slow, steady thud. It had begun. The first name flashing on my screen, Mom. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the green button. Scout tilted his head like he could feel my pulse racing. Finally, I answered. Lucas, she started, her tone sharp. What is this I'm seeing on Facebook? Morning, Mom, I said quietly. Don't morning me. You had Thanksgiving with the entire family, without telling us? Without inviting us. I took a slow breath. You told me this year was just for Ethan's family. That was before, she began, then stopped herself. Before what? I asked. Silence. Then, softer. You know I didn't mean to exclude you. It's just, things are complicated. Complicated, I repeated. That's one word for it. She sighed. Lucas, why would you post those pictures? Do you know how it looked? I smiled bitterly. It looked happy, Mom. That's all. Minutes after we hung up, Ethan called. No greeting, just his voice, tight with anger. Real classy move, Luke, he snapped. Trying to make us look bad online. I didn't make anyone look bad, I said. I just shared my Thanksgiving. Oh, please, he barked. You think I don't know what this is? You're still mad about Mom not inviting you. I leaned against the window, watching snow drift over the hills. You're right, I said. I was mad, but I'm not anymore. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything from you, Ethan. That's kind of the point. He scoffed. You always play the victim. You think money makes you better than us now. I laughed softly. No, but it sure makes me freer. And then, before he could respond, I ended the call. By noon, the rest of the family chat had exploded. Cousins sent messages like, Lucas, your ranch looks incredible. Wish I'd known you had that place. Honestly, that looked like the best Thanksgiving ever. A few even wrote, privately, thanks for including us. You made us feel like family again. Those words meant more than I expected. For years, I tried to earn my mother's approval, my brother's respect, two currencies that never paid off. Now, I realized I didn't need them anymore. I'd built something better, connection without condition. 3 weeks later, Mom showed up at my ranch. No text, no warning, just her car pulling up the snowy drive, her figure small but steady against the mountain wind. I met her at the porch. She looked around slowly, her breath fogging in the cold air. It's beautiful here, she said softly. I didn't realize that I could have something like this. I finished for her. Her eyes flickered. Guilt, pride, confusion, maybe all at once. Lucas, I'm sorry. I should have invited you. It wasn't right. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Hearing her admit that, it was more than I expected. I'm not angry anymore, I said finally. But I hope you understand why I did it. I needed to stop waiting to be included. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I do understand. And I'm proud of you. I just wish. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. We stood there, quiet, the mountains around us vast and endless. And for the first time in my life, I felt like we were standing on even ground. That Christmas, my phone buzzed again. A group message from Mom. Lucas, we're doing Christmas at your place this year, if you'll have us. I smiled at the screen for a long moment. Not because I needed their company, but because this time it was my choice. I typed back, sure, everyone's welcome. Then I looked out across the ranch, where golden lights spilled through the snow-laden trees, and thought, maybe that's what family is supposed to be. Not who invites you, but who shows up when you finally open the door. That year taught me more than I ever expected. That sometimes, exclusion is just the universe's way of pushing you toward independence. That silence can be strength. That love doesn't always come from blood, but when it does, forgiveness makes it real. I didn't plan to teach anyone a lesson, but maybe the biggest lesson was mine. You can't force belonging. You can only create it. And when you do, the right people will find their way to your table. If you've ever felt left out, underestimated, or overlooked, remember this. Sometimes the best response isn't revenge. It's growth. It's peace. It's building something so bright that those who excluded you can't help but notice the light. So tell me, have you ever been left out by your family, only to come back stronger? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read them. If this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories like this one, and share it with someone who might need a little reminder of their own worth. Thank you for spending time with me today. I'm Lucas, and from my mountain ranch in Aspen to wherever you are, I'm wishing you peace, warmth, and the courage to build your own table.